Is Iraq the most beautiful country in the world? Yes, by its history, its civilization, its nature and geography. Inside of the house of Agatha Christie.
Among those who loved Iraq and lived here was Agatha Christie, the world's most famous writer and novelist, the queen of crime fiction, mystery and suspense. She wrote 66 detective novels, 14 short stories collection and one play, selling over 1 billion copies in English and over 1 billion translations. She lived in Iraq from 1928, traveling between Baghdad, Ur, Mosul, Atra, Nimrud and Cairo. She chose the banks of the Tigris as her source of inspiration for writing, and it was in the magnificent setting that she composed her finest novels. This charming balcony served as inspiration for her most beautiful works. It was in this now dilapidated house that the writer spent the happiest days of her life. She describes the house in her memories. It was overlooking the Tigris on one side and the breathtaking palm groves and orchards on the other. The house is old, dating from the Ottoman era, and is located on the west bank of the Tigris. The air is sweet and invigorating. It has a beautiful inner courtyard and palm trees, whose fronts extend to the balcony, railing and windows. The house is surrounded by palm groves. Near the house, children were playing happily. I often saw women coming to the river to wash their dishes and pots. What's beautiful is that the rich and the poor live in great harmony in Baghdad. And of course, she didn't forget to mention her lovely balcony. The house is located in Karada Mariam district. In the 1920s, it was the residence of Prince Ali, brother of King Faisal I, and it has borne his name ever since. Agatha Christie also mentions this house in her novel They Came to Baghdad. Her husband mentions this house in his memories. A small room had been set up at the back of the house where Agatha spent her days writing and typing her novels. She wrote more than 6 of them this way, season after season. Jabra Ibrahim Jabra also mentions this house in his book Princess Street, where he recounts his visit to the writer's house and her husband, describing its magnificent inner courtyard and the beautiful trees that adorned it.
Leonard Willie worked in the archaeological site of Ur from 1922 to 1934. He discovered the royal cemetery, which hides many treasures and secrets. He discovered also the 3 harps. Behind the house, there were palm groves, but with the extension of the population, the zone have been transformed to quarters. During the Second World War, she returned to her country, and after the end of the war, she came back to Iraq.
Agatha Christie wrote 3 novels related to Iraq. They Came to Baghdad, Murder on the Orient Express, and Murder in Mesopotamia, as well as her memoir, Come, Tell Me How You Live. Murder on the Orient Express. At the time, the Orient Express was a major international project linking Iraq to Europe. Agatha Christie was traveling on this train from Europe to Baghdad. It was on this train that she conceived the idea for this novel, which recounts a crime committed on board and leads the famous Belgian detective Hercule Poirot to solve the mystery. The plot unfolds primarily in Istanbul, then in Yugoslavia, before the train becomes stranded in northeastern Croatia. The detective, of course, manages to solve the crime, and strangely enough, most of the passengers were involved. However, the story contains dimensions that lead us to feel sympathy for the passengers as we discover that the murder man deserved his fate, being responsible for the annihilation of an entire innocent family. Her novels has been adapted into several captivating films and television series. Murder in Mesopotamia, a novel of revenge. It is rare to hear of a writer writing a novel to get revenge on someone, at least not morally. Yet, Agatha Christie wrote her novel, Murder in Mesopotamia, to get revenge on those who had caused her dismissal from the archaeological site of Ur. Dismissed from the site, and despite her repeated appeals, she was unable to return. She then wrote this novel, which tells the story of a crime whose victim is the wife of the head of the archaeological dig, Catherine Woolley. From the very beginning of the novel, the heroine is gripped by fear and confides in Inspector Poirot that she has received threatening letters. After her murder, Inspector Poirot investigates the case, while the events unfold at the excavation site. He explores the details of the crime until he discovers the culprit, her husband. They came to Baghdad, the only novel set almost entirely in Baghdad. It offers a vivid description of the city in the early 1950s, the markets, streets, and hotels, even though the events are fictional. The novel tells the story of a woman who travels to Baghdad in search of her lover who had already arrived in the old city. She discovers that the hotel where she is staying is dangerous. A stranger dies in her room, whispering a secret message to her before he dies. This message concerns an international conspiracy to sabotage an important World War II conference being held in Baghdad, which the leaders of Great Britain, the United States, and even Stalin were preparing to attend. She collaborates with the security services to thwart the plot. The novel has a happy ending. She manages to identify the culprits and is reunited with her lover Edward. Come Tell Me How You Live. This is not a novel, but an autobiographical account in which the author recounts her experience with her husband during archaeological expedition in Iraq and Syria. She humorously describes daily life at excavation sites, the local workers, and her travels in the Middle East. This book testifies to her deep connection to Iraq and Syria, where she also worked with her husband, the archaeologist Max Malwan, on excavation sites. It includes excerpts from her diary detailing her experience at the excavation sites, life in the camps, her interactions with the workers and local populations, as well as her observation on food, customs, hospitality, and the amusing situations she encountered during the travels and work. This account offers a glimpse into life in the 1930s and 1940s. Among her memories, she mentions the flies and fleas that kept her awake. According to her description, they constantly jumped around her waist, an activity she called her nightly waist exercise. After separating from her first husband in 1928, she decided to travel to Iraq. Here, she visited the historical site of Ur and met Mr. Woolley, head of the archaeological mission, and his assistant, Mr. Max Malwan. They became acquainted and married in 1930. From then on, she accompanied her husband, 14 years younger, to archaeological sites, working alongside him in Iraq and Syria. In the ancient Assyrian city of Nimrud, Calais, where Max Malwan was directing excavations in 1952 at the palace of Ashur-nasir-pal II, the archaeologist discovered an ivory object, the head of a smiling woman. Christie nicknamed it the Mona Lisa of Nimrud because its smile resembled that of the young woman in Leonardo da Vinci's painting. Despite the difference in era, the discovered statue dates from the 8th century BC. Christie recounts cleaning the statue with rudimentary tools after painstakingly extracting it from a medieval. Indeed, it seems as if she herself is smiling. After millennia, the Lady of Nimrud stands before us, her ivory statue, radiating a beauty as exquisite as the most magnificent painting in the world. At that time, Christie's work at the site consisted of cataloguing, photographing, cleaning and labeling the archaeological remains. Finally, Agatha Christie left Iraq after a long journey that began in 1928, resumed after World War II, and continued until the late 1950s before her final departure in 1960. It is worth noting that her love for Iraq remained undiminished even after her departure. She even mentions her attachment to this remote region of the world in her autobiography.
During the World War II, Agatha Christie left Iraq to join her country. She left Iraq in 1934 and came back in 1947 after the end of the war to work with her husband in the field of archaeology in Nineveh. And Iraq continues to attract the travelers, writers and researchers by its history and the beauty of its diversity.